So the owner's telling me that, that something's not quite right with the transmission on this. Again, he says it's a titled as a 53, but he said it's kind of put together from multiple different trucks. So he thinks it's closer to a 49. I'm not a Chevy guy, so I don't know. It's fixed up real nice, as you can see, but when you put it into either second or third, you can't get the transmission to come back out of gear. So I'm going to take it for a little spin. Back toward me and down is first. Now let's see if we get to second.
Roger, gimbal.
Second. Third. Got brakes. Brakes are a plus. All right, I got it in all the gears, but it did feel like it was a bit hard to get it to come out of third, like it drug a little. Let's try that again. Second. Third. Well, it's not jumping out of first.
Ooh.
Bouncing around a little bit here.
Yeah.
I imagine the video will be a little bouncy.
Oh, yeah.
Six miles on that speedometer, so they put a new speedometer in when they rebuilt this truck. And our test drive, we started at 5, so we put a fifth of the miles on this truck just test driving the transmission on it. It's kind of cool to get to drive something that really hasn't been driven yet by anybody.
End up being this old.
All right, we've encountered our first problem. We did get it out in the field now. It's getting warmed up, and I put it in second gear and it popped right out. So we're gonna do a little troubleshooting now. It was staying in second earlier, but I'm wondering now if the transmission's getting hot, if it's gonna start popping out. So anytime you do some repairs or you're driving something that's really old and you want to put it back on the road, it's always important to do what we call it family-friendly garage hot laps, which is basically get it out and get it hot. I mean really hot. Everything up to operating temperature. Really work it before you put it on the road. We found so many problems with vehicles that we were just about ready to get back on the road. We thought everything was fine. You know, is it kind of what we call lot drove. You know, you drive it up and down just a little bit. Oh, everything works good. I'm ready to go get it insured and put it on the road. And that's not how it works usually, especially if it's been sitting a long time or you're rebuilding something. You really ought to find a place to just go out and just drive it and get it really hot. So anyway, first problem is popping out a second. Let's drive it a little more and then see if we can't figure that out. I think I got her hung up now. Should be in neutral. Okay, I think we've solved the problem. It just won't come out of gear, especially once you're stopped. We had to jack up the back end to get both tires spinning freely, and then I really had to get rough with it to get it back into neutral. So it's in neutral now. I talked to the owner of the truck about it, and we've agreed it's time to pull the transmission. The transmission is just not right. It probably needs to be rebuilt. So we're going to get it back in the shop, and this thing is back out of commission. And for those of you watching the channel, this is why you do hot laps before you put it on the road. I'm sorry we're overemphasizing that in this video, but you just gotta take these things out and get them hot before you're ready to put something this old back on the road in permanent use. So. All right, well, we got the transmission ripped out, so I'm gonna carry it over into the heated barn, and we're gonna rip it down and see if we can't figure out what inside of it is binding up. So that inner bearing completely worn out. So what we think was going on is when we get that thing in a bind, right? That shaft inside of
Yeah.
it was getting twisted
That's what it would do, yeah.
because it was so loose, and then it would just bind it up
Uh-huh.
because of that inner bearing race.
That's what it was.
So we took that whole transmission apart there. That inner bearing was right there in the middle of it. There's the old transmission. Had a bad bearing in it. So what we're gonna do is the customer had another extra transmission laying around. Seems like it's okay. We're gonna stick that in and try it and see what happens. We're getting it painted up now, and we're gonna put it in here in just a bit. Alright, so right now I'm putting a little bit in and I'm spinning it here. I'm just going to pre-lube this transmission bearings a little bit before we stick it in there and drive the truck. I had it turned up on its end like this and put some fluid down in here. There's a bearing right here, which was the bad bearing in the last transmission. And I got it pre-lubed. Now I'm not going to fill it all the way up because it'll end up coming out the back when we're putting it in all over the top of us. But I'm going to put a little bit in there and just spin it and get all these bearings lubed up real good. Before we put it in there, so there's nothing dry, no dry bearings when we fire it up and back it out of the garage for the first time. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on video because you don't see this very often. So we got the 3-speed transmission put in, and this truck has what's called an enclosed drive shaft. If you take a look at this, let me turn the light. It's not like your traditional drive shaft where the U-joints are exposed. This truck actually has the entire drive shaft enclosed inside of a tube, and then this bell actually slides up into the back of the transmission and bolts up using this flange right here. So the entire drive shaft is sealed from the elements, if you will. And on the back of this U-joint, you've actually got little tabs here that once you tighten down your bolts, you have to bend these little tabs up here, and it basically locks your bolt in place once you bend those tabs up so they can't back out and that drive shaft gets loose in there and starts banging around. Kind of a cool design. Of course, they don't use it anymore that way, but just thought I'd put that on video because you don't see that very often. Kind of cool. Katie and I are going for a little test drive here, checking out the transmission. I'm going to go to second here. Second. Works good, plenty of power. Go to third. Third's got plenty of power. I'll bring it to a stop now. Before it was binding up and you couldn't get it out of gear. She's shifting through all the gears just perfectly. There's neutral. There's first. Let's do reverse first. Going well. Horn works. I think this is in good shape. Alright, so we verified the repair. After changing the transmission, the new transmission appears to be doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. It's going into all the gears properly. I can put it in second or third gear, and when I stop the truck in second or third, it's letting me shift out of gear like it's supposed to. The only thing I noticed is after putting it all back together, the speedometer isn't working, so I'm gonna have to go back and check that speedometer cable. I know I put it on, but it could be that little gear on the used transmission we put in this may not be any good. So we're gonna have to take it back to the shop long enough to repair that. But the issue was that the transmission that we took out had a bad bearing in it, and the bearing was so loose that it was allowing the center shaft inside that transmission to get in a bind. And we ripped it all apart, we found it, and instead of rebuilding that transmission, the customer had another used transmission. We had no idea if it was any good or not, but we just decided to put it in. It kind of felt tight when you were, just twisting on it on the bench. It felt like it was good, but it was definitely used. So anyway, I just put it in, and you know, going through all the gears and everything, it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. So kind of a fun little project. We got it going outside of having to take it back one more time and get the speedometer fixed. This thing will be ready for the road.